welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Free Expression Friday series, an interview series from ABA's American Booksellers for Free Expression, celebrating the amazing work of booksellers, organizers, and book people in general, fighting for the right to read.
Hi, it's Philomena from ABFE, just checking in with this week in book challenges. Nationwide, the Trump administration's orders have led to widespread book banning in Department of Defense schools serving military families. In Iowa, rules are now set for enforcement of SF 496. Meanwhile, oral arguments were heard by a federal court in Des Moines about the law's constitutionality. In South Carolina, 4 more books were banned statewide. In Tennessee, Rutherford County Schools banned 32 more books, often going against review committee recommendations. And finally, Utah banned another book statewide. In state legislation, several bills have hearings coming up next week or have other news to report. Relating to bills that would ban book bans, Arkansas HB 1028 will have a hearing Monday, February 17th. New Mexico HB 27 will have a hearing Monday, February 17th. Colorado SB 63 passed committee with a due pass recommendation, and thanks a lot to the advocates who went and testified on behalf of that bill. Your voice made a difference. Relating to bills that would promote book bans, New Hampshire SB 33 will have a hearing on Tuesday, February 18th. You can find more information about these bills and hearings on your state senate or state assembly websites, or you can email ABFE, ABFE at bookweb.org for more information. Okay, and now on to my conversation with the amazing Ramunda Lark-Young, co-founder and owner of Mahogany Books in Washington, D.C. I'm here with Ramunda Lark-Young, the owner and co-founder of Mahogany Books in Washington, D.C. Ramunda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me. I'm down a person, but usually my husband would be with me too. So it's both of us are excited to be part of this conversation. So yeah, I'm representing both of us today.
Great. Yeah, because you opened the store together, right? And you run the store together. Can you just talk a little bit about how that came to be? I mean, what was your path to running this amazing bookstore?
Absolutely. So I've been in retail all my life. I worked at, a big box store when I was in high school. It was my first job. So I love retail. I love fashion. So I love being around shopping. That's just very, raw. But then when I went on to college, I was worked at like JCPenney. That was my first management. I have a degree in business management. So that was my first role in management. It happened to be in retail and store. So I just loved it. I love working with people and leading teams. But that type of retail got a little crazy. Holiday time, there was crazy fitting rooms. I was leading a crazy team. I was like, well, how do I pivot from that? I don't want to just be pigeonholed in retail management. Fast forward to, I was doing a career shift from JCPenney. A few of the stores were closing. And I thought, instead of staying on, I would like to pivot and do something else. And at that time, I was just looking for things that really felt intentional with me. It was a luxury to kind of pause and not have to rush to work. Thanks to my amazing husband, Derek, shout out. But I had the opportunity to kind of take my time and think about what felt authentic to me. And that was Howard University Bookstore. It was an independent bookstore at that time. Now it's not. But they took a chance with me because I had a strong retail background. I took a chance with them because it wasn't the crazy holiday book or clothing retail environment. And I was a voracious reader, always had been. I'm a voracious reader. So it was just a great opportunity to mix all those passions together. Business, I still loved business. I still loved managing teams. And now I could do it with books in an environment that was at an HBCU that really, again, felt authentic to me. I'm a proud graduate of Langston University, HBCU out in Oklahoma. So it's just a full opportunity for me to pivot in a way that was intentional. So that was my first foray into books, and that was like 20 plus years ago. And so after I was there, I was actually a buyer for them. They had textbooks, but I was like the general books buyer. It's an independent store. So all the books that we have in our store now, I was doing that for Howard University Bookstore. So that's when I got introduced to all the publishers and authors back then. So I loved that, did it a few years. And then another independent bookstore chain called Karibu Books that was here in the DC area. It was at one point the largest Black-owned bookstore chain in the nation. At that time, they had about 6 stores, and I was their district manager. So I was over all of the stores, making sure that operations ran smoothly, that there was uniformity. So again, my love for books, they came and took me from Howard. And it was just a great opportunity to really dig into Black bookselling at that time. So both of those allowed me to really kind of understand bookselling. After that, I then went to the other big box store that's standing still now, and I'm not going to name it, but it starts with a V. And I worked there for several years in community relations. So that gave me another aspect of bookselling, to do community relations for them and work with the schools and local organizations and corporations. So all of that background kind of primed me for Mahogany Books. But actually, people don't know this. A lot of people don't, and a lot of people do. But Mahogany Books was actually my husband's idea. He had been in books, the same company that I was the district manager for all the 6 stores. He actually worked for them back in college. I didn't even know he existed at that time.
I got so excited for a second. I was like, "Oh my gosh, was there a bookstore meet cute?"
I know,
but no.
there was not. I had no idea that he even worked there. And so when we got married, several years later, we were tossing around business ideas, and that's the one that really resonated with him. And I thought, oh my gosh, why not? I was raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, maybe 2 or 3 miles, maybe about 2 miles actually from Black Wall Street. And I never knew Black Wall Street was there. I never knew it existed. And I never knew it existed because it was never taught in my schools. And to know that all of these entrepreneurs and innovators and thought leaders, they created a whole world 2 miles from my house in the community that I lived, and never knew about it, was just mind-boggling. So for me, creating Mahogany Books, from all the experience, I happened to be in books, but for us to step out and do it was the call for me. I never wanted somebody else to not have access to our history. I didn't have access to our history, and somebody else dictated that. And so Mahogany Books allowed me the opportunity to make Black books accessible no matter where you lived. If there was not a bookstore close to you, there was not a Black-owned bookstore close to me at all growing up that I recall. And so I didn't want that. If I had only known about those innovators and thought leaders that were on Black Wall Street, how much taller, how much confident, how much bolder I would be, because I knew that they had done something that I was trying to do. So that's kind of my come from to opening Mahogany Books. At that time, almost 18 years ago, we started it in our 1-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, just with a laptop and an idea of how to make Black books accessible. No website experience, and just a love of books. Both of us have degrees in business, his is in marketing, mine is in management. So that's kind of how we started. It's just been a journey. So far, I kind of summed it up in about 90 seconds or 2 minutes, but that's some of the highlights of it.
That's perfect. It's such a great story. I mean, coming from Tulsa that had this kind of hidden history of amazing Black businesses, and then creating that in Washington, D.C., where you've landed, is so beautiful. And what was it like switching from clothing retail to books retail? Because book retail is so particular.
So particular. Yeah, I think for me, I was also in that space of quality of life. And so clothing retail, one of the biggest differences, the crazy hours, back at that time, when it was holiday, we were open at 2 a.m. or 24 hours. It was crazy. Black Fridays, and that's now has shifted back a little bit. But quality of life was important to me at that point. I got married and I wanted to spend time with my family. And so that was a big difference. Going into books, it still allowed me access to retail and the fun of meeting different people all the time, but not the chaos of the crazy fitting rooms and managing so many people. I think at one point I was managing about $8 million in inventory and about 22 people on my team. And that was retail. So this kind of allowed it to trim down a little bit and not have I wanted the quality of life, and that allowed me to do that. So yeah, those are the biggest differences between the two.
Yeah, well, I wish I could say I planned it this way, but I think it's perfect that this is going to come out on Valentine's Day and you own the store together, even though I didn't quite get my bookstore meet cute that I wanted.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah. But you know, we didn't, just to add to that, we didn't meet in a bookstore. We actually met on a dance floor in a DC nightclub. So we've got our own little meet cute going on, and now we've,
Love it.
moved it on to a bookstore. But yeah, we met on the dance floor, on the hip hop floor of the nightclub, and we had a great time. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right. Well, from nightclub to bookstore, still going strong. Well,
Yeah.
that's so amazing. And how has, you said that you started from that laptop, website just in the living room.
Yeah.
How has the store grown since you first opened?
Wow, it's grown from, we were so excited to have one sale come through. Like, the internet is vast. So to have somebody find our little corner of the internet and buy a book, I mean, we were so excited. Like, I mean, through the roof to see that one little sale going through the channel.
Do you remember what it was?
No, I do not remember what it was. That's a good thing to kind of see if I can parse out and find. But how it's changed from then, I remember even in 2020 from, I think it was from May to October, we moved 100,000 books. This little operation in just that small amount of time, 100,000 books moved. So it has, just from an online presence to, it's changed to having an outpost in National Airport here, and we're inside of another store. We're at National Harbor, where we see over 50,000 people each year come through our doors. And the impact we've been able to make, not only just for us and our community, but young people and people who travel now, can now access certain books in the airport, like Asada or Langston Hughes or Booker T. Washington, other titles that I've never seen in airports. And so they really focus on Black culture, Black history. So those are tremendous changes. But, having a team, having payroll that's in the tens of thousands, this is a crazy work to come from a laptop in our home to a full-fledged business. But, also the amazing authors and relationships that we've gotten to create. All those are big changes from when we started to where we are now. But yeah, it's very humbling. Some people are still surprised that I'm humble. I'm humbled every day our doors open and that people choose our store. There's so many amazing bookstores in DC, but for them to traverse all of those and to land at our doorstep remains humbling to me, because they have lots of choices. So big change. But we have a dope team. My husband and I, even though we're in life together, to be in business together is a whole thing. So yeah.
I can't imagine.
He's amazing. I love me some him. So not saying we don't get on each other's nerves sometime, but to be in business, like I said, almost 18 years, and to be married almost 23. It's a great, I'm enjoying it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, and so in Mahogany Books, obviously, every month is Black History Month to some extent. And also, we're talking during Black History Month. Do you do anything in the store to recognize that in any particular way? Or is it just a continuation of what you're doing day in, day out?
Yeah, good question. For us, it's really, we always talk about we're going to do this type of intentional whatever programming for Black History Month. And it just comes to be our same program. And we do celebrate Black. We lean into it heavily every day, all 365 days of the year. So it's not, we're going to hang this big banner saying these are our Black History Month. We could, but we have a lot of events. We usually have a lot of events. So for us, it's just celebrating Black culture, Black history, Black community every day. So there's no special. We'll call it out on our website so people can find it. From a commercial aspect, a lot of people are looking for a Black History Month, this or that. So we'll have a banner on our site so people can click and see all the product. But our whole website is Black, celebrating Black books. So we don't do something like special, this is our Black history signature thing at all.
Yeah. And I'm thinking now of your frankly iconic shirt, Now You Can't Ban My History, right? And the Black Books Matter slogan that looks like you're wearing the Black Books Matter pin, which I know because I have one.
Great eye, yes. Always.
So good. So, if you haven't been, check it out. Obviously for the books, but also for the amazing merch. But what the series that I'm doing this month is talking to Black store owners and Black booksellers about what it means to support Black bookstores beyond Black History Month, because there's kind of a paradox, right? That there is maybe more people are paying attention to Black-owned businesses during Black History Month, but then other months of the year, many of those businesses are struggling and are not getting that same attention. So, I mean, how can people step it up and stay there all year round?
I think it's really simple. We can make it, I could say, oh, it's this grand thing or grand. But it's just for me, even something, interviews like this, posting them in March and April and May. Yes, there's a space, like you said, it's a paradox. Like we want to amplify in February, but amplify in May, in June, and July. Keep that conversation going. It should not end in these 28 days. And so I think corporations can do that. We always want to cram it into this month, which is, again, the paradox. I understand it, but then there's other months. So I think that's one of the ways. But two, just sharing, period. Sharing about a Black bookstore and being intentional with how you shop. It's a lot of people that come into our store who are not Black, and that's what our bookstore is for. But then they leave. They turn around and they look around like we have Black music going, we have Black photos of authors, but they feel like it's not for them. And I'm like, it's Black, it's books. And books are for everybody. And so I think the type of support is being intentional and going into places that you may not be the center of that space, right? White people are not the center of our space. We are proudly center Black people in our stories in that space. But going in there, it's a public space. It's open to everyone. And so doing that throughout the year, being intentional about how you buy, how do you support people who've historically haven't had access to resources, to funding and things of that nature, and are still standing. And so supporting that in a way that makes sense to them and to us. So I think that's another way. Something else that's a little different when it comes to supporting a Black business, like reach out to local politicians. Are there grants? How do we become part of their line items? It's literacy, it's education, but kind of coming outside of the box and thinking, yes, I can shop. Yes, I can post and share about you throughout the year. But man, if you need something else, setting up time, talking to that bookstore owner and saying, hey, what are some of your needs outside of just inventory? What does it look like from programming, or do you want to expand? And having that person from the community talk to a local legislator. How do we put this line item in the budget? How do we get grants for this establishment that's impacting the community? So I think all of those things really impact not just, during Black History Month, but all year long. But sometimes people don't think about it, and it can be a low-hanging fruit to do.
That's also important. And two things I want to underline. One, if you're listening to this right now, it's a podcast. You can pause it and you can call your city council member. You can call your state representative or state senator and say that you support Black businesses and you would like to see legislation that supports them. You don't need to know what it is. You can just say that and they'll write it down. And then two, the other point that you made, I think is just so important, is that line from I'm not centered in this space to not welcome in this space, the confusion between those two things, that is internal work that everyone can do. That I should say that white people can do when they're walking into a space that is not centering white people. Push against that. Push against that discomfort that other people deal with all the time.
All the time. I walk into bookstores and there's Shakespeare on the wall, and no shading. That's great. But and I don't turn away, but I don't turn away because I'm forced to do it. It's everywhere. I had to adjust. And so everybody, adjust. It's okay. It's not harmful. It's a bookstore. So, and some people really come in and embrace it, but others, you can see it on their eyes. They're like, oh, have I stepped into something I shouldn't have stepped in, or I feel uncomfortable. You can see it on their faces. So yeah. It was something else I wanted to add about what corporations and schools, there's a whole different, the federal government and the changes that are here when it comes to DEI and all those things. Well, there's still corporations that can purchase from local bookstores. And I think that's a year-round effort, right? How do we spread money across the entire community that you live? And Black bookstores are professional, are efficient, are effective, just as other bookstores are. So again, being intentional about those dollars and resources. Even Mahogany Books, even though we specialize in books that are written for and about people of the African diaspora, we can order just about any book in print for corporations, and we still do. And so again, being intentional, how do we spread that around? So we've got to still have a lot of great corporate partners who are doing it. We'll see how that changes. But that's, again, if you're a person, one person at a school as a teacher, or a person that's at your job and are hosting a conference, think about those resources that are from a Black business that can support your efforts too, and call upon that. So,
yeah, the value from a purely business perspective, the value you can get from an independent bookstore that you're not going to get from a giant online mega corporation that I won't name.
Yeah.
It's incalculable. It goes beyond the balance sheet.
Absolutely.
Last question, which is a lot more fun than a balance sheet. Are there one or two books right now that you're really excited about?
Wow. People ask every bookseller that, and we're like,
I know.
But but we love books. We're mired down, and there's so many. I think I just finished A Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo. What is his last name? I'll have to look it up, but it's called A Sky Full of Elephants. And actually it was our book club read, and my husband was reading. I was like, But once he told me about the premise, it was like, I had to read it. It sounds kind of morbid, I guess, but the premise is, one day, everybody's just working and doing their thing. And then all the white people in the book, they, in the nation, in the world, just stop what they're doing and they walk into the water and they perish. And that's it. And I know it's kind of science fiction, it's science, but the perspective is not the morbid aspect. It's, as Black people, how do we live? How do we work in a space where we're not constantly watched or judged or impacted in a way that has negatively, impacted us? What does that feel? Are we still carrying around what a lot of people refer to as the white gaze as we make decisions and move? And, what does that look like? Like, that is so weird, and how freeing it can be in some aspects and how maybe disturbing it may be for others in different aspects. So anyway, there's just a good science fiction book that I just read. But right now I'm reading Love and Whiskey by Fawn Weaver, who is the creator of Uncle Nearest whiskey brand. And so I love reading biographies and history books as well. So to hear her story and also about how Uncle Nearest came to be, it's great. And then two books that are sitting on my desk is The Amazing Harlem Rhapsody by Victoria Christopher Murray. We've worked with her for probably the last 18 years we've been in business. So to have this new book come out, historical fiction about, I think it was Jessie Redmond Fawcett, who a lot of people say is like the creator of the Harlem Renaissance, because she featured so many voices, so many writers on her platform, The Crisis. I don't know if it's The Crisis magazine, but I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited to read that. So, yeah. And then I have the other one here is kind of a business find. It's called You Deserve to Be Rich by the creators of the podcast Earn Your Leisure and also InvestFest. So those are actually some authors we've hosted, but I can't wait to dig into their books. They just were all released here very recently. So little business, little biography, a little history, a little science fiction. So
amazing. Well, Ramunda, thank you so much for talking to us, and thank you for everything you're doing year round. I can't wait till I get to come back to Mahogany. It's a wonderful, wonderful store. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the work that you're doing to really put the spotlight on us and our voices. It does not go unnoticed. So thank you as well.
Thank you for listening to Book to the Bookstore Education Podcast, brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!